Alright guys, first fish of the day. We're back out here. Hopefully you can see it, it's decent. It was, put her back. Alright, it is super windy out here today. I mean, crazy windy. We're in the far end. I mean, you can't get, that's the bank right there. This is the farthest end right here. And that fish was absolutely on the bank, on shore. We've got kind of a muddier bottom out here, but there's sand underneath kind of the mud, and so you can see old beds all over the place. I haven't seen any new beds yet. The water's like 58 degrees, but they're definitely thinking about it. They're all the way up here in the shallow. It's awesome to see, and so we are gonna try to catch a few more. And that first one was on a swim jig, right here. This is the 6 cents swim jig. There's things I like about it. There's things I don't like about it. But what I love about it, it's got this beautiful flat head right here. If you can see that, beautiful flat head, and it comes right over cover really well. It's got a screw lock keeper. I like that a lot. The weed guard's maybe a little soft for me. If I'm in really heavy cover, it tends to give way and you get stuck a little bit. And then the hook is decent, but if I'm in really heavy stuff or think I'm going to get in big fish, it just gives a little too much for me. It's probably good for fluorocarbon. I've got fluorocarbon on now, but when I'm using braid, it just isn't enough. So I like to swap to either a Dirty Jigs California swim jig or a Greg Hackney swim jig. Both of those have just awesome hooks on them, and the weed guard's a little stiffer. So in heavy cover, I like something a little more beefy. But it's good in sparse cover and maybe fluorocarbon line, or if you don't really have a super hard hook set and you don't work those fish over too hard, maybe it's the perfect one for you. But I find for me, in really heavy cover or braid, it's just a little light. All right, let's get to it. Let's catch a few more fish. One of the reasons I'm using a swim jig though is because we're in such skinny water. I mean, there is not much water here at all. So I like something a little more finessey than, say, a spinnerbait. Spinnerbait could work, but you would have to make such a perfect cast so it doesn't splash real hard, and it gives off so much flash and vibration it might overpower and almost scare the fish too much in this shallow water. So I really like a swim jig in something like this, and I sometimes will use craw trailers, but in this case I'm using something with a lot of kick, so it actually moves the whole bait, so I don't have to shake it, as I'm reeling it in. The whole thing just moves and rocks and rolls. So that's why I'm using what I'm using. Wanted that one badly, so just I work it. It's a soft plastic jerkbait. I work it more like sort of in between. At this stage, I'm letting it get down a little bit, but closer to the surface, just very erratic, just like you would a suspending jerkbait. You're popping the rod and pointing it back to it. Like so. This is just, I'm going to let it sit there, and then just quickly pop the rod and let it sit, and it's just going to dart all over the place. And because it's still cooler, I'm letting it sit a little bit to get down. But you could work it real fast and it would be almost on the surface, jumping and hopping. But because it's cooler, I'm letting it get down a little bit. I'm going to put a new one on. This one's been beat up pretty bad. And so we're going to put a new one on and see if we can catch a few more. I like it. If you see, we're all the way up to that little teeny teeny, I don't know, buck brush if you want to call it that, but just a little bit of brush. And so I'm casting it right up into it and working it out. And the fish seem to be really, really tight to the cover. So again, looking for something. The swim jig was working, but also looking for something that's just super non-intrusive, but right there. You can just put it there and it moves erratic and they lash out at it. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll see if we can catch a few more. All right. Let's see. Little baby fish, little buck bass. It's kind of odd. We've been doing this for a little bit here, going up in the shallows, and it seems like, you know, there are fish up here, and I've actually seen there are fish spawning, or at least thinking about it. There was a male and a female, both of them on a bed, pretty good sized fish, back on the shoreline just a little bit. We didn't get them. I was so surprised at what I was seeing that I wasn't really quite prepared for it. But we are finding fish, but I'm just wondering, I don't know, we're going to run this a little bit longer, this pattern. We're finding fish, we're catching fish, but we're having a hard time catching big ones. We caught one pretty good one to start off, so it's, I don't know, I haven't quite got it figured out yet, but we're gonna work at it a little bit longer and see what we can do. But I even half wonder if that fish there wasn't on a bed, because when I cast it up, immediately something bumped it. I didn't get it that time, and then I cast it back up again and started swimming away with it. So either there's more than one fish there, or more likely there's a bed that he was just trying to move it off the bed, and he didn't have it real deep in his throat. So I'm going to put a new bait on. I'm actually going to touch up this hook point too. It's just a little dull, and we'll get right back to it. All right, another buck bass. Yep, seems like a lot of little ones in the shallows, so I don't know. We'll try to figure something else out, but boy, a little frustrating. A little frustrating. We'll I don't know. I haven't got it figured out yet, but we'll keep working at it. Just keep plugging away. Alright, one on the spinnerbait. Not a giant, but I would guess a male, maybe 2 pounds, something like that. Got him. There's a pier that comes out here, right in front of us, you can see, and he was right up on that pier. I've noticed, at least at times, it seems like something that they'll push bait fish up against. So working a bait, you know, I'm coming right into it now, but once I can, working a bait parallel to it, just like they corral bait up against it, sometimes works. So I don't know if that's what's going on right now, but we're going to make a few more casts and see if we can figure it out. It's like a decent fish, it's hard to tell. Either way, he's putting up a good fight, even if it's not a decent fish. That's okay. Alright. Yeah, that one looks a little healthier, a little fatter belly, a little healthier, pretty white. A little healthier than some of the others. If you saw that, I just flared the reel, and that one bit it immediately as I flared it. Immediately hit it. Well, there seems to be a couple fish here. That's a little one, but still kind of exciting. really feeding up. So yeah, I kind of guess they've either got bait pushed up here or something like that. Something's going on. They are feeding. And with how many are biting, I'm going to probably try another bait before we move on. Try another bait in there and just see if maybe I can keep them going a little longer. Let's see. There we go. Swap baits, and sure enough, right in the same place. Looks like decent. All right. I love it when it works. That's a good one, Joe. All right, the power of swapping baits right there. These hooks are bending out a little bit. Feels like a little baby. It's bigger than I thought, just coming out at me. Back off the drag just a little. Oh. Not a baby, after all. Man, there is a school of them here. That's fun. That's fun. We struggled and struggled and struggled. I know there's fish up shallow, but man, and these are all got fabulous. There must be just a wad of bait fish just backed up against that concrete structure. Yeah, we have struggled a bit. We caught one first thing and thought, boy, I've got it figured out. We are good. But then we just kept catching small little bucks and no big females. And I saw some of the bigger females, but just could not get them to bite. But this is fun when it works. But to see a male and female bass on a bed together was kind of neat all by itself. Annoying not to be able to catch them, but kind of neat to see them. So obviously they're getting around up there, thinking about spawning. Again, one of those scenarios where if we didn't have power poles, we'd be in pretty big trouble because the wind's pushing us in. So we would be pushed right up into that concrete, pier, and we would have lost almost all chances of getting more bites. They would have all spooked right off. And if we ran the spot lock, sure, that would work, but the tail end would have whipped right around, so it would be pretty much on top of them. We're close as it is, but we would be on top of them by the time that spot lock you know, did what it needed to do. And then on top of that, we're in pretty shallow water, so all the wash of the trolling motor constantly trying to keep us where we're going would blow right into these fish. Not a good cast, but that would absolutely not be helpful. But by having power pulls, instantly power pull down, and we can just work these fish over and over and over again until we're ready to move. But we haven't had to make any noise at all. Alright, one more here. We swap baits again. And this is on the re-range jerkbait. And we made a cast a little farther up on the pier. And this one came. We missed a couple on. Figured I'd swap. You know, I've swapped baits a couple times, and I missed two on a jig and one on a creature bait. They just don't seem to be taking it in real good. So I went back to a treble hook bait and picked up one more there. So let's see what else. Oh my. Well, obviously the bass aren't the only thing here. Look at that thing. That is a really big crappie. That might be the biggest one I've ever encountered. Wow. I think he wanted that. My goodness. Getting it back out is a real challenge. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, guys. Look at that thing. Wow, that is a monster crappie. Huge fat belly. I bet there's stuff in there. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I love a good fish fry, so that one's going in the live well. We're gonna eat that one tonight. Delicious. I'm gonna retie this, guys, and then we'll see if we can pick off a couple more. Okay, guys, just picked off one more. He was coming at me. I jerked and nothing, reeled down, and there it was. Like right now, this particular bait is the one that they are really eating. I'll show you. It is the Megabass Vision 110, and it seems like this particular color. Put this one back. Fish. Okay, Vision 110, and this color right here. I don't remember which one it is, but it's got a lot of flash to it, a lot of silver flash, and boy, that's the one that seems like it's working right now. And you're jerking it, and then it just letting it sit, and that's when they'll run away with you. Which even in their response, that they just start going with it, makes me think again. We know there's a spoonfish here, but that you know, that's the case. There's a school, and so they're fighting with it. Once they get it, they want to go somewhere else with it to keep it away from the rest of the fish. Now, what I'm trying to do here is run it somewhat close to the pier, so that if the fish is, you know, is going after that bait, it feels like it has it trapped in some way. Fish like to have the, you know, the bait pinned up against something, And there's multiple ways to do that. Obviously, in a case like this, against the pier, they can pin the bait real easily and it can't get away. Sometimes, actually, the top of the lake. So it's basically a glass ceiling in a sense, and they'll pin the bait right up to the surface, and that's where you'll see them flicking out, whatever. But they know that they can't keep going out. They've got to come back. So it's a way of pinning the bait. Sometimes that's out in open water. Something like this, they're going to corral them and push them into a surface like this and keep them pinned in here. And sometimes a log or a steep bank, anything like that they can pin them is a good tactic to run your bait along it, because it gives them the sensation that that bait has nowhere to go. So you have a much better chance of getting a fish just to naturally lash out and go after that bait. All right, spinnerbait rides again. Okay. Nice fat belly, healthy looking fish. So if you look right up here, you can actually see a small little clump of lily pads just emerging from the bottom. And so I cast it up past that, and I saw the lily pads swirl as I went by, so I just kept winding it by. And then just as I was getting past him, I gave it a quick, roll and stop, and he absolutely clobbered it. He came and got it. So I'd say he was chasing after it, and that triggered him to bite. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, guys, I picked up another little baby buck bass with a spinnerbait. It just seems we found that one really good school of fish on the dock, but we haven't found another good school. We just keep pecking them off, but we can't seem to find a giant wad of them again. But we'll keep chipping away at it. We don't have too much longer out here this afternoon, but we'll do our best to pull a few more fish together. Okay, guys, quick recap. We're in the boat. We were fishing yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. We started by going all the way up on the far north end of the lake, which is typically the warmest water, and just knowing a little bit, from looking at it from the map. And I fished it a couple times in years past. Again, never this time of year, but just knowing a little bit about the lake. That is the more shallow end, and there is a little bit of buckbrush. You saw that, and a little bit of it's muddy, but then sand underneath it, and a good spot for them to spawn. A lot of protective sort of coves and pockets. Other than that, the lake is a little bit featureless, which makes it maybe a little bit difficult to run a pattern on. We immediately, I guess just going through here, I thought, well, I didn't catch that, on that many baits, but I pulled some rods out, and it turns out we caught them on 5 different baits and rods, and we got bites on a couple others, but I won't really worry about those. But immediately we ran all the way up, and we saw a fish in the shallows, and I thought, oh, this is good. It was a good fish. We caught one almost immediately on the swim jig. I talked to you a little bit about that, and we did catch a couple on that, but we caught a good one on it almost immediately, and that maybe threw me off just a little bit. There were some good fish in the shallows, but not many. Most of them were males. Little males, and we caught quite a few of those on the soft plastic jerkbait, and just an offset hook, wide gap hook on a soft plastic jerkbait, and that worked quite well. I'm not as comfortable with it as some. It's a bait that I haven't used that much. So I don't have a ton of confidence in it, but I'm gaining confidence in it as I fish it and see how it works and get used to catching them. I had a little bit of trouble with a hookup ratio. I was using all fluorocarbon and probably a lighter rod, and so I've now swapped to a more sensitive rod. It's a very sensitive rod. It's an NRX, and it is a 7-1 medium heavy, and I've gone to straight braid. It's 30-pound braid, and my hookup ratio has gone up tremendously, so that's helped a lot. We went through, we did catch quite a few fish, all small fish, but we did catch quite a few on this one, and we missed a few. And then, let's see, I did catch a couple on a creature bait. If just thinking through things, I would have changed. Because we were in such shallow cover, this is a 3/8 ounce tungsten weight. I probably would have swapped it to something like 1/4 of an inch, so it was just a little subtler, a little slower moving, because we were in only a foot or two of water. We probably would have gotten a couple extra bites, or at least, I don't know, just in my head, I think that would be better in such shallow water. If I'm going in 3 feet, maybe 4 feet to 10, 12 feet, I would prefer the heavier weight. But in that super skinny water, I'd probably downsize that weight if I was to do it again. And then we fished that quite a bit, and then we backed out, and I fished off a break line. We caught a couple pickerel. I didn't even show those on video, but we did catch a few pickerel off a break line, and I thought, because I'm just thinking, you're backtracking, if a lot of the fish up there were males and small fish, there has to be bigger fish somewhere, and usually they're somewhere off the break. So we fished off the break. I didn't catch any bass off that, and then I got thinking, there's a long concrete pier, and you saw that long concrete pier that sticks out, and it's pretty much a featureless long lake. And so I thought, boy, if there's a place where these fish are coming up from deep water, because it goes out to probably, it was 14 feet of water probably, off the end of the pier, and then it moves up into super shallow, and then kind of into places where they could spawn. And it's also a place where they could push bait and drive them right into that, that pier, and they have nowhere to go. They can't escape, so they just push them right in there, and a whole bunch of bass will just set up on them and pin them, and they'll feed on them and then probably back off just a little bit, but they won't let the bait go, and then they'll feed on them and push them right into a tight little ball, and then they'll probably back off just a little bit, but if they try to get out, they're going to push them back in and hold them there. So it's a good place, for fish, especially in this pre-spawn, as they're moving up from deep water, and they're following that in, and then pinning bait against it. It has nowhere to go. So it was a terrific spot, and sure enough, we caught a whole bunch of fish right on that pier. And we started off with a spinnerbait, and a 1/2 ounce River to Sea bling spinnerbait, and I just put a little bit of I took a marker, like a dip and glow marker or whatever, and put a little bit of chartreuse on the side of it. I'm guessing you can kind of see that, just a little bit on each side, but I put it up farther, so if they're seeing something to key in on, I wanted it to be closer up to the hook. I figured I'd not put it, sometimes I put it on the tail, but I thought, that might be distracting. If I'm putting it all the way on the tail and they're going after that, they're not getting the hook. So I actually put a little chartreuse on the sides up closer to the hook, thinking that might help. Again, I don't know if it made a big difference or not, but in my head it does. So sometimes it's psychologically, whether it's helping you or not, I'm guessing it does a little bit, but even if it doesn't psychologically, if I believe it's helping me, well, I might fish it a little bit better. So that was a big player on catching those fish, and they were just thumping it. And particularly when you'd reel it and you'd pop the rod, they'd hit it, or you'd be reeling it and you'd give a quick turn, and just almost immediately they'd lash out. And the key was kind of doing that closer up to the pier. It seemed like once you got way off the pier, well, the fish weren't there. They were pinning the bait close to the pier. So that seemed important, to be making your pops or your reel twists kind of closer to the pier. We caught a whole bunch doing that. Then we swapped baits a couple times, but the one that really worked was this Megabass Vision 110 jerkbait, suspending jerkbait. And boy, we caught, I don't know, maybe 4 more, and we caught a giant crappie on it. And I had tried a silent version. Sometimes, you know, same kind of bait, but on a silent will work. I didn't catch anything. I got hit a couple times, but I didn't catch anything on it. But this one caught him, and then we swapped directions, and we caught a couple more on it. And we got a couple bites on a jig and a creature bait, but we could not get them in the boat on that. So then I swapped back to the jerk bait and caught another one or two. And then we moved on, and we caught a few more on a spinnerbait. One okay fish and a few small ones. We had fished a creek coming into the lake, and there was one sitting up on it. We got a couple other bites, but didn't land anymore. And then I went out, I followed it out. There was a little bit of a point, nowhere near as good as the pier, and we caught one there on the spinnerbait. And then we ran out of time. There were a couple other things I wanted to try, but I didn't have time to do it. And it was really windy to begin with, and then it was calming down, and that's when you could, you know, probably have a better chance of going off some of the brake lines. But it was so windy, it kind of limited what we could do. So if I had more time, I probably would have tried. There were a couple very small points, not major points, but on a featureless lake that might be the next best thing. And then there were a couple breaks that I wanted to try coming back into spawning coves, but we ran out of time. So that's what I would have done, you know, next, but I didn't have a chance. Hope that helps. Just giving you a quick review of what we found. There were a few big fish in the shallows, but very hard to catch. A lot of little ones. We caught those, and then we moved off into deeper water and we caught some better fish. Well, so glad to bring you along. Look forward to next time. Take care, guys.